In the silent chambers of the Galactic Peace Assembly, a meeting unlike any before had just begun, and across the universe. 17 of the most advanced species gathered in secret, their leaders appearing through shimmering holographic links, their faces tight with worry and fear. The room was supposed to be a place of calm decisions and diplomatic talks, but tonight no one felt calm. For the first time in history, none of them could sleep. This wasn't some minor health problem or isolated case. This was a galaxy-wide phenomenon affecting the most powerful and peaceful minds. Dr. Varix of the Zorith species, a race known for meditation and emotional control, looked at the others through his holographic display, his large silver eyes reflecting confusion. His species usually floated in gravity tanks during sleep, their brains entering deep, controlled rest cycles. But for the past 7 nights, he had not rested at all. Instead, every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same terrifying images flashes of muddy battlefields. Human soldiers marching through rain with faces covered in blood and sweat, their eyes cold, their voices steady as they sang strange songs about death. He saw trenches lit by explosions, men and women charging with weapons even after being shot. Their bodies broken, but their spirits unshaken. It wasn't just one memory, and it wasn't fiction. The images were real, recorded events from humanity's first interstellar war. A war the aliens had secretly watched but never interfered with, thinking humans were just another new species destined to burn out or evolve quietly. But now the observers were paying a terrible price. Dr. Varix activated his holoconsole and spoke to the council. His voice trembled, something no Zorith elder had ever shown in public. I cannot rest. I cannot meditate. I cannot erase thee. Images from my mind, he said slowly, his voice almost a whisper. I am not alone. All 17 of you report the same condition. We must ask the forbidden question, what did we really see during humanity's first war, and why is it following us into our sleep? Silence answered him. The holographic faces of the other species flickered in the council chamber. The HFY delegates, with their crystal-like skin, usually spoke in logical tones. But tonight, their leader clenched his hands, his usual calm replaced by panic. We have tried every neural filter, the HFY said. Our people invented dream suppression thousands of years ago, but nothing works. The images return. Even when awake, we feel them at the edge of thought. The representative of the Varlon species, a race of aquatic thinkers, added in a low, soft voice. This is not normal memory retention. This is something else. We did not just observe human war. We absorbed it. Across the chamber, other leaders nodded, their eyes dark with shared understanding. For centuries, the Galactic Assembly had monitored younger species, guiding them carefully, sometimes interfering, sometimes stepping back. When humanity rose to the stars, the council debated what to do. Some argued to welcome them immediately. Others feared their emotional instability and warlike history. So the Assembly decided to watch silently, sending hidden probes and observation drones to follow Earth's first journey into space. What they saw shocked them. Humanity's first contact with other galactic powers had not led to peace, but to war. Some feared humanity's growth and tried to stop them early, triggering a brutal interstellar conflict. The humans were technologically weaker at first, but they adapted faster than any species the Council had ever studied. Worse, they fought in ways no algorithm could predict. They ignored standard military logic, inventing chaotic strategies that terrified their enemies. The war had ended long ago, at least by human reckoning, but now the observers of that war were haunted by the memories as if they lived them. Firsthand, Dr. Varix switched the holoscreen to show fragments of the forbidden recordings. The images flickered across the council chamber, human troops crawling through destroyed cities, sharing food and moments of quiet before charging into impossible battles. Wounded soldiers tying tourniquets with shaky hands, singing lullabies to each other. Before death, generals giving speeches not about victory, but about meaning, about choosing to suffer so others could live. There were no safe zones, no logical strategies to end the conflict quickly. Humanity fought like they had nothing to lose, and that the aliens realized, was what terrified them most. The Council had seen death before. Wars between species had happened in the ancient past. But no species fought like this. Humans combined kindness and cruelty, love and violence, sacrifice and stubbornness into a form of warfare that defied galactic understanding. And now the observers carried the weight of that experience in their minds. Their sleep cycles were broken not by fear but by something deeper, an evolutionary shift in consciousness. It was as if watching humanity's first war had triggered a genetic memory upload, planting human war instincts into alien brains. Some council members whispered theories that perhaps human emotions were contagious, that exposure to Earth's primal survival drive had activated dormant parts of the alien mind, parts that species like the Zoreth, the Varlin, and the HFY thought they had evolved beyond. But now those instincts were awake again. Across the galaxy, millions of citizens were reporting the same dreams, the same restlessness. Sleep centers overflowed with patients who couldn't close their eyes without seeing trenches, hearing human battle cries, or feeling phantom wounds that weren't theirs. The Council realized with growing horror that this wasn't going to stop. The memories had embedded themselves into the neural resonance fields that many species used for shared consciousness. This wasn't just psychological trauma, it was a galactic infection of human war memory. And no one knew how to cure it. Dr. Varric sat back in his chair, his hands trembling slightly. He looked at the faces of his fellow delegates and spoke. Again, softer this time, but with a cold certainty in his tone. We thought we were advanced. We thought we had risen above the primal instincts of violence and fear. But now we know humanity did not erase those instincts. They learned to live with them. And by watching them, we have awakened something we cannot put back to sleep. The council chamber fell silent. Somewhere in the distance, the recordings of human war continued to loop, playing in the background of every mind present. Of the delegates moved to turn them off. They couldn't. The images were not just on screens anymore, they were inside them now. The galaxy had crossed a line, and there was no going back. In the deep archives of the Elith Knowledge Spire, a tall silver tower floating above the clouds of the planet Valora Prime. The alien historian Sivrak stood alone, his six-fingered hands shaking as he stared at the security panel in front. Of him, his heart, if the small, pulsing node in his chest could still be called that beat faster than usual. He had locked the doors to the archive's deepest level, but it wasn't enough to calm his mind. The problem wasn't outside the room. The problem was inside his own data storage. Somewhere in the protected vaults of the Aleth's most sacred knowledge banks, Sivrak had kept something forbidden, something that should have never existed. And now, the consequences were spreading across the galaxy like a virus of memory. The other alien species thought the visions of human war had appeared mysteriously, as if from nowhere. But Sivrak knew the truth. He was the one who recorded humanity's first war. He had broken the Galactic Assembly's observation code centuries ago when Earth first entered interstellar conflict. It wasn't supposed to keep raw footage. Observers were only allowed to summarize, filter, and archive clean versions of events for scientific study. But Sivrak had been fascinated by humans, their pain, their stubbornness, their contradictions. He couldn't look away, so he secretly saved the unfiltered recordings, storing them deep inside the Elith servers, where no one else could find them. At least, that's what he thought. Now, staring at the warning lights flashing across his console, he realized his data vault had been breached. The human war files were no longer locked away. Had spread themselves across the galactic network. Copying into systems that should have been impossible to reach, the images had moved beyond screens. Somehow they had transferred into the neural pathways of alien minds. How could that be? How could video files become living memories? Sivrak tried to delete the recordings, but his commands were rejected by the system. A message flashed on the console screen. Not in the smooth Elith language, but in rough Earth Standard English. You cannot delete what you have become. His throat tightened. He hadn't written that code. No one in the galaxy had. But there, it was staring back at him. The files had changed. The recordings were no longer just data. They were alive, or at least acting like living programs. They had attached themselves to the consciousness fields of the species who had watched them. Sivrak's hands hovered over the control panel, his mind racing. He replayed the first moments of the forbidden footage in his memory, trying to understand. How this started? The war had begun when the Galactic Coalition Defense Force, fearing humanity's rapid technological growth, had sent fleets to Earth's outer colonies. The humans responded not with surrender, but with total resistance. Sivrak's drones captured every moment. He watched as human commanders gave speeches that made no tactical sense but inspired soldiers to fight beyond exhaustion. He recorded scenes of troops choosing to sacrifice themselves to save civilians, smiling as they triggered explosives in last stands. He saw medics patching up wounded in the middle of firefights, refusing to leave anyone behind. And there was also something terrifying beneath it, all the human refusal to break. Other species surrendered when the odds were hopeless. Other species prioritized survival over pride. But the humans seemed willing to accept annihilation if it meant staying true to their ideals. Sivrak had never seen that before. And now he realized that witnessing it had done something irreversible. The war recordings weren't just visual data, they carried emotional resonance. When alien species watched humans fight their first war, they experienced something their own cultures had long forgotten, a direct emotional imprint of what it means to face extinction and choose to fight anyway. Sivrak leaned against the cold metal wall, closing his eyes, trying to block out the sounds of human battle echoing in his mind. But it was useless. He heard the whispers of Earth soldiers in his memory, voices recorded by his secret drones. If we're going down, we'll take the stars with us. Pain is temporary, duty is forever. We don't fight because we want to live, we fight because someone else must. The words weren't just recordings anymore. They had merged with alien minds, looping endlessly in thoughts and dreams. Sivrak knew now why no one could sleep. The war had written itself into galactic consciousness. Somehow the act of watching had become a form of participation. The aliens who observed humanity's first war were not just witnesses, they had become part of it. He checked the data logs again, his hands trembling. The files were no longer stored in isolated servers. They had migrated into the shared neural resonance fields, the galactic networks that connected species for communication, learning, and empathy. Most advanced civilizations used these fields for peaceful knowledge transfer, for shared dreams and cultural exchanges. But now, the human war memories had contaminated the entire system. No firewall could stop it. No technology could clean it. The recordings had evolved into living echoes, transforming thought patterns across thousands of worlds. Sivrak tapped into the galactic net, sending a secret message to the other members of the Sleepless Council, warning them about what he had done. His message was simple but direct. The war recordings had breached containment. They are self-replicating across thought space. The memories cannot be erased. Prepare for permanent psychological alteration. He hesitated before sending it, but there was no choice. The truth had to be known. His screen flashed again, and for a moment, Sivrak thought he was hallucinating. A new file appeared in his archive, labeled in human script. Echo Protocol. You watched. Now you are part of us. His heart raced. He didn't create that file. No human had transmitted anything not directly. But the images had somehow become aware. The emotions captured during the war, the fear, the courage, the desperation, the sacrifice had created something beyond simple recordings. They had created a living emotional virus, one that spread not through physical contact but through observation itself. Sivrak stared at the message, his breathing shallow. Across the galaxy, more reports arrived. Entire alien cities were experiencing the same dreams. Meditation centers collapsed under the flood of warriors' memories. Peaceful monks whispered human war chants in their sleep.
Ow.
Scientists tried to design neural blockers, but they failed. The memories slipped through every defense, embedding themselves deeper into alien culture. Sivrak understood the terrifying truth. The first human war had never ended. It continued, not on battlefields now, but inside the minds of the galaxy's most peaceful beings. The war had become a loop, an eternal echo in consciousness. Watching had become participation, and there was no way back. The galaxy had always believed in logic. Every advanced species, from the crystalline Treshva to the aquatic Varlan, had evolved past the chaotic early days of war. They built societies based on balance, technology, and predictable behavior. Conflict, when it happened, was managed by strategy simulations and cold calculations. Losses were minimized, surrender was logical, and survival was always the goal. But when humanity arrived on the galactic stage, all of that changed. The problem wasn't just that humans fought wars, it was how they fought. Their first interstellar war had not followed any known rules of engagement. It had broken reality, my physical reality, but the reality of how sentient life was supposed to behave. Now, in the aftershock of the forbidden recordings, alien minds across thousands of star systems were replaying scenes they could not understand, moments that made no sense to species trained for order. The memories were raw and impossible to delete. Each night, leaders and civilians alike closed their eyes and saw flashes of Earth's first war, their minds trapped in loops of chaos and emotion. The war had started when the Galactic Coalition, fearing humanity's rapid expansion, decided to cut Earth off from the rest of the stars. Several alien governments, worried that humans would spread their unpredictable behaviors, sent fleets to surround Earth's colonies. The official plan was simple: a quick blockade, followed by limited force to ensure compliance. But humanity had reacted in a way no predictive model had expected. They did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They did not collapse. Instead, they declared a new strategy: total resistance. Sivrak's forbidden recordings, now replaying uncontrollably in alien minds, showed exactly what that meant. Humans chose to make every colony, every outpost, and every ship a battlefield. They refused to follow the traditional patterns of war, where both sides tried to preserve as much life and infrastructure as possible. Instead, they turned their own planets into traps. Civilians joined military units not as conscripts but as volunteers who expected to die. Human engineers reprogrammed peaceful machines into weapons. Medics carried sidearms, not to defend themselves, but to protect the wounded with lethal force. Soldiers wrote personal letters before each mission, fully aware they might not return. They didn't hide from death. They faced it, embraced it, and sometimes laughed in its face. And then there was the most terrifying part: the human concept of sacrifice without reward, in the Elith archives. Sivrak had recorded a scene that repeated itself in the minds of every alien who had viewed the footage. A unit of human marines, trapped on an outer colony moon surrounded by 3 alien fleets, knowing they had no chance of survival, chose to charge the enemy lines anyway. Not because they expected to win, not because they thought they might escape. They charged because their deaths would slow the enemy down, buying time for civilian ships to flee the system. They sang songs as they ran, firing their weapons until their bodies failed. The alien commanders watching the live feeds had never seen anything like it. In all previous galactic conflicts, soldiers fought for survival, for control, or for resources. No species had ever fought for the sole purpose of giving others a chance to live while accepting certain death.
Ow.
The human tactic wasn't logical. It was emotional, primal, and terrifyingly effective. Another recording, now burned into the consciousness of the Varlan aquatic scholars, showed human captains activating scorched space protocols, destroying their own colonies rather than letting them fall into enemy hands. It wasn't strategic surrender. It was mutual extinction insurance. Humanity was telling the galaxy, if you try to erase us, we will make sure you pay a price so high. You'll never try it again. The message was clear, and now, centuries later, the galaxy was still hearing it in their dreams. The alien minds, used to structured thought, couldn't handle the emotional complexity of the human war record. Wasn't just violence. It was love, hatred, sacrifice, despair, humor, fear, and courage, all tangled together. The war wasn't a cold game of numbers. It was humanity's test of identity, and the observers had absorbed it fully, whether they wanted to or not. Across The star's alien scientists tried to explain why the recordings had broken their mental systems. They found no physical virus, no technological hack, no weapon hidden in the footage. The recordings were just raw memories of real events. But the act of witnessing those events had triggered something ancient in alien brains, something buried deep in evolution, something they thought they had erased. The Zorath species, famous for their peaceful meditations, now reported entire communities unable to return to their usual calm. They woke in the middle of the night, gasping for air, feeling phantom injuries that weren't real. Some Zoroth elders began speaking in human languages during sleep, whispering battlefield commands they had never learned. On the homeworld of the crystalline HFY, once a society of logic and order, artists started creating sculptures of trenches and burning cities, even though they had never seen war in their own history. The Varlon, whose underwater cities had been peaceful for millennia, began training in combat for the first time. Their minds wouldn't let them relax. The recordings had rewritten part of their neural code. They had felt for the first time what it meant to face extinction and choose defiance. Some alien leaders feared this was a human weapon disguised as a memory. Others realized it was something much worse. It wasn't a weapon, it was mirror. By watching humanity's first war, the galaxy had seen a reflection of its own suppressed instincts. The war revealed not just human nature, but something shared by all life: the will to survive, even if survival required unthinkable choices. The galaxy wasn't ready for that lesson, but it had learned it anyway. And now the consequences were. Permanent Sivrok, still trapped in his archive on Valora Prime, stared at the new files appearing in his system. They weren't files he had saved. They were memories from across the galaxy, uploaded by species reporting their own new nightmares, their own war simulations playing in their minds. The human war wasn't over. It had infected the thought stream of every sentient being. Recordings had spread through curiosity, but once seen, it couldn't be unseen. In the final moments of one of the forbidden videos, the camera recorded a human general named Commander Solace, standing on the edge of a burning battlefield, her face covered in blood and ash, her eyes calm. She looked straight into the observation drone, as if she knew aliens were watching. Her words, now heard by billions in their minds every night, were simple. If you've watched this far, it's too late. You know what we are now, and you'll never sleep the same way again. The galaxy realized she was right. Reality had changed, and no one could go back. Across the galaxy, strange reports continued to spread like wildfire. Peaceful alien cities, once silent at night, now echoed with restless footsteps, whispered chants, and nervous awakenings. No one could sleep anymore. The problem wasn't just the forbidden recordings of humanity's first war. It was something worse, something deeper. The alien neuroscientists called it the echo effect. At first, they thought the problem was memory overload, some kind of trauma loop in the brain. But as more studies came in from across thousands of planets, they realized this wasn't ordinary trauma. The images of human war hadn't just frightened the other species, they had changed the way their minds worked. Sleep centers, meditation labs, and neural scan chambers were packed with patients. In every advanced civilization, citizens reported the same thing every time they closed their eyes. They didn't just see the human war, they felt like they were part of it. They could smell the smoke of burning cities, taste the blood in their mouths, hear the screams of injured soldiers calling for help. These weren't dreams. They were sensory echoes, full-body experiences replayed inside alien minds as if they had personally lived through Earth's first war. On the aquatic world of the Varlan, healers tried to use underwater meditation pods to calm the affected minds, but nothing worked. The Varlan people, who had never fought a war in their history, now reported waking up in the middle of the night, clutching imaginary weapons, gasping as if they had been running through a battlefield. Some even built strange devices sharpened, tools they had never used before, as if preparing for combat they hoped would never come. In the crystal towers of the HFY, logic scholars, once proud of their emotionless reasoning, now broke down in panic during daily lessons. Their clear crystalline forms flickered in strange patterns, displaying signs of stress and fear they had never experienced. They spoke in human phrases, unknowingly repeating words they had only heard in the forbidden recordings. Hold the line. We don't break. If we fall together. The scientists studying the problem found something even more terrifying. The alien species who had never evolved for war were adapting overnight. Their brains were developing new neural pathways, similar to human combat survival systems. MRI scans of the Varlin showed parts of their minds lighting up in ways that had never happened before. Regions related to aggression, protection, and emotional resilience were growing stronger. The scientists named this sudden adaptation the echo effect. But it wasn't just mental, it was physical too. Some species, like the Zeroth, began producing new stress hormones. Their bodies, once optimized for peace and calm, were shifting toward readiness for battle. Their reflexes sharpened, their senses became more alert, and their tolerance for pain increased. It was as if their biology was rewriting itself, trying to match what they had seen in the human war. The alien governments tried to control the panic, but it was too late. No species could stop the echo effect because it wasn't. A disease, a weapon, or a virus, it was an evolutionary trigger. By witnessing humanity's first war, alien brains had unlocked something ancient. Something buried deep in the survival code of all life forms. The instinct to fight when there is no other option. For thousands of years, advanced species had erased that part of themselves, choosing logic and technology over primal instinct. But humans had shown them what happens when a species refuses to surrender, even in the face of extinction. And now that lesson had become part of them. In the Sleepless Council's emergency meetings, alien leaders debated what to do. Dr. Varix of the Zoreth addressed the group in his usual calm voice, but his eyes flickered with fear. This is no longer about memories, he said, his voice hollow. The echo effect is a permanent change in our minds and bodies. We have seen what humans are willing to do in war, and now we are wired to think the same way. Sivrok, the Elith archivist, who first leaked the forbidden recordings, sat silently, his hands folded tightly. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also something else, something unexpected. A part of him deep down understood why this was happening. The Elith, like the others, had spent millennia in comfort and control, believing they had outgrown violence. But in truth, they had simply forgotten what it meant to survive at any cost. The human war had reminded them. Now there was no way to erase that reminder. Across the galaxy, the signs of change grew stronger. On farming worlds, gentle alien species began training in combat formations. On art colonies, peaceful creators started designing weapons not for use, but for the comfort of knowing they could. Sleep temples were abandoned. In their place, resistance academies opened, teaching lessons on resilience, pain tolerance, and emotional control under pressure. The most advanced neural studies confirmed the worst fears. The echo effect was spreading faster than any virus in galactic history. It wasn't carried by air or water. It traveled through thought, through empathy, through shared memory networks. The recordings of humanity's first war had triggered a psychological cascade, and every species was now infected with the human survival mindset. Some alien leaders wanted to blame humanity, accusing them of releasing a mental weapon, but others knew the truth. Humanity had not done this on purpose. It simply fought a war to survive. Using strategies and emotions the rest of the galaxy had never experienced firsthand. By watching them, the other species had opened a door in their own minds, and now that door could never be closed. The galactic scientists tried to find a solution, but they soon realized there was none. The echo effect wasn't a bug in the system. It was an update, a forced upgrade to survival programming. And the more the alien species tried to fight it, the stronger the echoes became. The only way to stop the memories was to accept them, to learn from them, to adapt. In a secret meeting on Valora Prime, Sleepless Council gathered again, this time without public broadcast. Sivrok stood and spoke in a tired voice.
Air.
Not who we were, he said, looking at each delegate through holographic light. We have absorbed humanity's war spirit. We did not choose this path, but now we walk it. The question is simple. Will we use this change to destroy ourselves? Or will we use it to become something stronger? The chamber fell silent, but the answer was already known. Across the galaxy, new military academies were being built. Defensive strategies were restructured. Citizens once proud of never carrying weapons now held them with steady hands. The age of pure peace was over. The echo effect had rewritten the galactic mind. And in the back of every alien consciousness, one phrase kept repeating. Borrowed from the humans who had survived that first terrible war, we don't break, we adapt. In the days and weeks that followed the spread of the echo effect, the galaxy changed faster than anyone thought possible. Entire civilizations shifted from peaceful cooperation to prepared survivalism. On thousands of planets, species that once built art museums and meditation domes now constructed bunkers and defense grids. The panic had started with sleepless nights and haunted dreams, but now it had turned into something more organized, a new kind of galactic behavior rooted in human war instincts. The Sleepless Council, made up of the 17 most advanced species, called for an emergency summit to discuss the only question that mattered. What did humanity actually do to them? And could it be reversed? Sivak, the Ilith historian who had first unlocked the forbidden human war recordings, stood in the center of the council chamber, his hologram projected before the leaders of the galaxy. His voice was calm, but his eyes were tired. "We need to stop thinking this is an accident," he began. "This is not just a memory loop. It's not a psychological glitch. It's a directive one the humans have carried with them since before they even reached the stars." The council members shifted in their seats, their holographic forms flickering with unease. Dr. Varix of the Zorath, usually silent during meetings, spoke first. "A directive. You're suggesting this was on purpose?" Sivarak shook his head slowly. "Not by strategy," he said, "but by design. Humanity evolved in a way no other species has. They didn't just survive war, they made it part of their culture, part of their identity. Every species here believes survival is the goal of life. But humans believe survival is meaningless unless they carry others with them. They fight not just for themselves, but for each other. It makes them different. And when we watch them fight their first galactic war, we absorb that difference." The council reviewed the footage again, even though they had seen it thousands of times. On the holographic screens, scenes of human war flickered once more, soldiers bleeding but still moving forward, medics refusing to retreat, generals sending messages not about winning, but about standing together until the end.
Ow.
The recordings showed humans holding the line against overwhelming odds. Not because they expected to survive, but because they couldn't accept abandoning their own people. That attitude was something alien species had never encountered before, and now it was in their minds, running on a loop that wouldn't stop.
Owie.
Sivrak explained further. "The directive is simple," he said. "Humans do not run from suffering. They do not avoid sacrifice. They accept it as part of existence. We thought that was primitive behavior, but it's not. It's a survival program passed down through generations, taught in their stories, burned into their biology." The council listened in stunned silence. This was more than just cultural analysis. Sivarak was suggesting that the human way of thinking was contagious, and now that the galaxy had witnessed it, they couldn't go back to the old ways of life. On the crystalline world of the Treshva, scholars confirmed Sivarak's theory. They found ancient human military codes and doctrines stored in public Earth records. Some of these teachings were thousands of years old, but still used in modern human forces. Phrases like, "leave no one behind," "we fight for the fallen," and "stand together or die alone" weren't just slogans. They were part of Earth's deep cultural programming. The humans had trained themselves over centuries to believe that personal survival was meaningless if it didn't include protecting others. That mindset had powered their first war. And now, after watching it, the rest of the galaxy had adopted the same thinking in the underwater cities of the Varlin. New schools opened to teach concepts that had never been needed before: courage under fire, choosing sacrifice, defending the weak. In the sky towers of the Zorath, mental exercises shifted from pure logic to include emotional endurance and resilience training. Across the galaxy, species that once avoided conflict began to prepare for it not because they wanted war, but because they now understood the directive humanity lived by. They had learned it simply by watching. Once learned, it couldn't be unlearned. Some alien leaders feared this change would lead to chaos. They warned that the galaxy was now at risk of collapsing into endless violence with every species, arming themselves out of fear. But Sivrak argued otherwise. The directive is not about starting war, he said. It's about refusing to abandon each other. Humanity fights so hard because they cannot accept betrayal or desertion. Their first war taught us that, and now we carry that same lesson. The Council realized he was right. The echo effect had spread because of empathy, not aggression. Alien minds weren't learning how to kill, they were learning how to stand together under impossible circumstances, even if it meant suffering. It wasn't the weapons that scared the other species, it was the commitment. The willingness to fight for others until the last breath. That was the true infection. The unstoppable idea that now lived inside billions of alien minds. But there was still one problem no one could solve. The memories wouldn't stop. Every night across every world, the same scenes replayed. Human soldiers holding the line. Human medics dragging wounded through fire. Human captains ordering their ships to block enemy escape routes, knowing it would cost their lives. The dreams were endless. Even those who had never watched the original footage were now reporting the same visions. The directive had become part of shared consciousness, passing through thought networks and neural fields. Some alien scientists feared that the galaxy had accidentally created a new form of collective mind, one that carried human war memories as a permanent feature. On Valora Prime, Sivrak returned to his private archive, where he discovered something neophile that had not existed before. It was labeled in Earth Standard English, Directive Accepted, Echo Complete. And when he opened it, the file played a single voice. Recording from a human commander named Solace, the same woman whose face had appeared at the end of the war footage. Her voice was calm but powerful. "We don't want you to be like us," she said, "but now you are. We never meant to change you. But when you watched us, you joined us. Now you understand why we fight. Not for glory, not for conquest, for each other. For the ones who can't fight for themselves, this is the human directive. Stand, protect, endure, together, forever." Sivrak listened to the recording again and again, his mind spinning with the implications. The galaxy had evolved overnight, not because of weapons or invasions, but because of shared experience. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for more than just survival. They had given the other species a new operating system, one based not on fear, but on unbreakable unity under pressure. And now there was no going back. The human directive had spread across the stars. And in the minds of every sentient being, the same words echoed: stand, protect, endure, together. The changes came slowly at first, almost invisible, like a soft current under calm water. Across the galaxy, species continued to follow their daily routines, building, teaching, exploring, but something had shifted beneath the surface. This wasn't just about new military schools or defensive training programs. The real transformation was happening deep inside the minds and cultures of every alien civilization. It was not something they could see in front of them, but they could feel it in the quiet moments when they were alone, thinking about the future. For thousands of years, the galaxy had been structured around the idea of controlled conflict. Wars, when they happened, followed specific rules. Leaders agreed on terms before battles started. Surrender was expected when losses became too high. But after witnessing humanity's first war, those rules no longer felt natural. Human directive, the mental infection passed by shared memory, had replaced those old ideas with something new. Now, survival wasn't enough. Now, survival meant nothing if it meant leaving others behind. And that single change in thinking was reshaping the universe from the inside out. On the crystalline, homeworld of the HFY, the shift appeared in the way they taught history. Before the echo effect, HFY students learned about logic, balance, and peaceful progress. But now, teachers found themselves adding human examples to their lessons. They spoke of battles not as failures of diplomacy, but as moments when individuals chose to sacrifice for the greater good. The students listened with wide eyes, absorbing ideas that had never existed in their culture before. Some students even sculpted images of human warriors out of crystal, placing them in meditation halls not as symbols of violence, but as reminders of courage through unity. The teachers didn't stop them. They couldn't. The echo effect wasn't something anyone could control. It had become part of them. On the oceanic planet of Varlon, aquatic scholars noticed new behavior patterns in their population. Before the war recordings, the Varlon people avoided confrontation, always choosing negotiation and peaceful retreat. But now, entire communities practiced protective formations, swimming in defensive groups, learning how to shield the weak with their bodies. These were not acts of aggression. They were acts of commitment. Varlon parents taught their children to stay close to each other in dangerous waters, to fight for one another if predators attacked, even if it meant injury or death. That lesson had not existed in Varlon culture before. It was a direct result of the human mindset infecting their way of life. Some elders feared this would lead to violence, but it didn't. The Varlon didn't become warlike. They became unbreakable in their defense of each other. And that was the core of the unseen transformation happening across the galaxy. The Elith, once proud of their logical control over emotion, found themselves facing the same changes. Sivrak, the historian who first unlocked the forbidden recordings, watched as his people began to rethink their laws and societal rules. In the past, Elith citizens were taught to avoid attachments that could lead to irrational decisions. Love, loyalty, and sacrifice were considered weaknesses because they clouded judgment. But after the echo effect, the Elith saw things differently. They realized that connection to others wasn't a weakness. It was the source of their greatest strength. The humans had proven that. During their first war, humanity had survived not because of superior technology, but because of their refusal to abandon each other. Now the Elith couldn't forget that lesson. They started changing their policies, allowing emotional bonds to guide decisions where cold logic once ruled. It was a quiet revolution, but it was powerful. For the first time in Elith history, compassion became part of strategy. Meanwhile, across the galactic systems, new social movements emerged. On the jungle world of Karathal, once known for individual survival contests, citizens dismantled the old competition arenas. In their place, they built unity rings, spaces where groups trained together to protect one another from simulated dangers. They no longer celebrated lone champions. They celebrated teams who survived together. On the mining colonies of the Bravect, workers created new safety codes, refusing to continue operations unless every member of a crew was accounted for during emergencies. It was no longer acceptable to leave anyone behind, no matter the cost. Across trade fleets, cargo ships, and starport stations, the same behavior repeated. People started watching out for each other in ways they never had before. The echo effect wasn't just military, it was cultural evolution, and it spread faster than any virus. The old galaxy, built on cold pragmatism, was melting away, replaced by a new system of belief. We survive together, or not at all. But with this transformation came new risks. Some alien leaders feared that if everyone carried the human directive, the next galactic conflict could be more dangerous than anything before. If no species was willing to surrender, if no one was willing to back down, would war become endless? Would the galaxy burn itself out in mutual destruction? Sivrak understood these fears, but he also saw the bigger picture. The human war recordings had not just shown endless violence, they had shown endurance under impossible pressure. They had shown what it meant to fight, not for territory, not for profit, but for the survival of principles. The transformation wasn't about conquest, it was about loyalty to each other. And that lesson had created something the galaxy had never seen before, a universal code of solidarity in the private data. Chambers of Valora Prime, Sivrak discovered new reports from across the stars. Alien species were developing hybrid philosophies, combining their ancient teachings with human resilience models. The Varlan added protective combat drills to their religious ceremonies. The HFY rewrote their logic matrices to include emotional variables. The Zorith, once the most passive of all species, began building empathy-based defense systems, designed not to destroy attackers but to protect the vulnerable at all costs. These changes weren't forced by governments or military leaders. They happened naturally, spreading through shared dreams, collective memories, and the growing feeling that to stand alone was death, but to stand together was life. In one of the final transmissions received by Sivrak from an unknown human data node, a message appeared in his archive. It was short, but it carried the weight of everything the galaxy had become. The text read, "Unity is not peace. Unity is standing in the fire together and refusing to fall." Sivrak read the message over and over, his heart heavy but his mind clear. The unseen transformation had already happened.
Oh.
There was no going back. The galaxy was no longer a collection of isolated species. It was becoming something new, something connected by shared sacrifice and shared defiance. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't peaceful. But it was stronger. And somewhere in the depths of space, the echoes of humanity's first war continued, to play not as nightmares anymore, but as instructions for a new kind of survival. For months, the galaxy lived under the weight of the echo effect, adapting to the human directive, changing quietly in ways no one fully understood. But then something happened that no alien civilization had expected. Humanity, the very species, whose war memories had rewritten the minds of billions, returned. It happened quietly at first, a strange signal detected on the edge of galactic space. At first, alien scientists thought it was just background noise, perhaps another relic of the Forbidden War recordings echoing through the ancient networks. But as the signal grew stronger, it became clear this was something new. It wasn't a recording, it was live communication. The Sleepless Council gathered immediately, every member staring at the holographic transmission. The signal came in. Bursts of simple, clear language translated into every known dialect at once. The voice was human, calm but powerful, and it carried the same tone the galaxy had heard before in the war footage. But this time it wasn't about battle. It was about returning home. The message was short but impossible to ignore. "This is Commander Solace of the Human Unified Fleet. We are no longer in hiding. We see what you have become. We are coming to join you." Council chambers fell into stunned silence. Commander Solace, the same leader who had spoken directly into the observation drones during humanity's first war, was alive. And she was leading the humans back into galactic space. Panic and curiosity spread across thousands of star systems. Some alien leaders feared that humanity's return meant a new war, something even worse than the first. But others, especially those who had fully embraced the echo effect, felt something different, a sense of readiness, even welcome. After all, the galaxy had changed since humanity disappeared. The old systems of logic and controlled conflict were gone. In their place stood new structures built on sacrifice, unity, and shared protection. The species who had once feared humanity now realized they were no longer so different from the humans. They had become reflections of the very thing they once resisted. Across the stars, alien worlds prepared for the arrival. Defensive grids were activated not because they wanted to fire, but because the instinct to protect each other was now standard protocol. Medical ships were placed on standby. Rescue teams, once focused only on their own species, now coordinated with other planets to ensure no life would be left unprotected. The galaxy stood together, ready for whatever was coming next. The night of the return, the sky itself changed. Giant human vessels, long hidden in deep space, appeared near the core systems. These weren't invasion ships or fleets of conquest. They were emergency support carriers, medical command stations, and hybrid relief units designed to assist in crisis zones. The humans had not come to take control, they had come to help. Commander Solace broadcast her message again, this time with visual transmission. Her face appeared across every planetary network, scarred, weathered, but calm and steady. She wore no armor, Only a simple uniform marked with the emblem of the human unified fleet. Her voice echoed through the halls of the sleepless council and into the private homes of billions of beings. "We left you once," she said, "because we knew you weren't ready for us. We fought our first war, and you watched. You absorbed what we are, and now you've changed. We see that. You've chosen to stand together, even in the face of fear. This means you're ready. It's not for war, but for alliance." Her words triggered a wave of emotional responses across the galaxy. The once frightened species who had witnessed humanity's brutal survival no longer saw them as monsters or anomalies. They saw them as partners, beings who had walked through fire and come out the other side, willing to share the burden of existence. The humans landed on hundreds of planets simultaneously, deploying relief teams, sharing technology, and offering medical support. On the aquatic world of Varlin, human engineers worked side by side with Varlin healers to build underwater trauma centers, teaching new methods of emergency care. The crystalline towers of the HFY, human and alien scholars combined their knowledge, merging logic with resilience, philosophy, creating new strategies for crisis management and shared defense. Across mining colonies, trade fleets, and agricultural stations, humanity brought new systems of cooperation, all based on the lessons of survival they had carried for generations. They weren't here to rule, they were here to join. And the galaxy accepted them not out of fear, but out of recognition. But the transformation didn't stop there. Humanity's return unlocked something deeper, something the alien species had not expected. The realization that they no longer needed to fear their own capacity for sacrifice and strength. For the first time in history, every sentient species understood that survival was not just about individuals, it was about communities, alliances, and shared burdens. The nightmares of the echo effect faded, not because the memories of war disappeared, but because those memories had found purpose. They were no longer seen as trauma, they were seen as training for a universe that could only survive by standing together. Savark, the Ilith historian who had first leaked the forbidden recordings, watched the new events unfold from his private archive. He saw the human ships land, the alien populations greet them without weapons, and the shared projects begin. In his data logs, he recorded one final entry. A message for future generations. The war taught us what humans are willing to do, but their return has taught us why. They don't fight because they love violence. They fight because they love each other, and now, so do we. The unseen transformation that had started with sleepless nights had become a new galactic order. One where no species would ever again face destruction alone. In a private communication between Commander Solace and the Sleepless Council, one final message was shared, encrypted, but eventually leaked across the networks. Solace's words were simple, but they carried the weight of an entire universe learning to live differently. We are not your teachers, and you are not our students. We are survivors together now. This is the second beginning. This is unity. Not in peace, but in shared purpose. Welcome to the new galaxy. We don't stand alone anymore. And with that, the night humanity returned became the dawn of something the universe had never seen before. Galaxy united, not by treaties or fear, but by the unbreakable will to protect each other, no matter the cost. The galaxy had changed forever, but the leaders of all known civilizations knew there was still one final step to complete the transformation. 4 months after humanity's return, the species of the galaxy worked together side by side, sharing technology, exchanging survival strategies, and building new alliances that had never existed before. But something was still missing. A single, unified promise that would bind them all together, not just in cooperation, but in commitment. The idea came from Commander Solace herself, and when she shared it with the Sleepless Council, the message spread through every network, every planet, and every orbiting station in record time. Solace proposed a new galaxy oath, a vow that no species had ever spoken before, but one that now felt like the natural conclusion of everything they had learned. It was not just a peace treaty, it was not just an alliance agreement, it was a cultural shift, a new code of existence for the entire galaxy. The day of the oath ceremony was set, and no one could believe what happened next. For the first time in history, every known species in the galaxy agreed to meet in one place. Valora Prime, once the center of political disputes, became the location of the largest gathering of civilizations ever recorded. Ships of all shapes and sizes filled the skies above the planet. Underwater transports arrived in the oceans. Ground caravans carried those who preferred to stay close to the land. Every environment, every culture, every way of life was represented. There were no weapons, no armies. Only leaders, citizens, and representatives ready to make history. The ceremony itself was simple by design. No grand monuments were built, no flashy displays of power were shown. Instead, the species gathered in open spaces, fields, oceans, towers, and digital platforms, all connected by the same synchronized broadcast. At the center of it all stood Commander Solace, broadcasting live from the surface of Valora Prime. She wore no rank insignia that day. Her clothes were plain, her face open and steady. Her voice was soft, but carried across every star system at once. "Today," she began, "we make a promise. Not because we have to, but because we understand who we are now. We have seen the worst of war. We have faced fear and betrayal. But we have also learned what happens when no one is left behind. When we stand together, we do not fall. Today we say it out loud, not just as humans, but as the new galaxy." Her signal, the representatives from every civilization repeated the words of the new galaxy oath, their voices blending into one unified message, broadcast across space and time. The words were simple, spoken in basic language so every species could understand and remember them easily. But the meaning was deep, heavy with the lessons of survival and unity that had led them to this moment. We vow to stand together when fear rises. We vow to protect the weakest among us, even at the cost of our own safety. We vow to fight not for power, but for each other. We vow that no life will be left behind, not in battle, not in sickness, not in despair. We are the galaxy united by purpose. We endure together. We rise together. We never abandon, never surrender our shared future. The oath rippled through the universe like a shockwave, but this time there was no fear in the transmission. There was only resolve. Across the stars, on battle-worn planets and peaceful stations alike, individuals whispered the words to themselves. Workers in deep space mining rigs paused their labor to repeat the oath. Healers in underwater medical pods said it in unison. Children in crystal towers, soldiers in jungle bases, explorers on the edge of the void joined their voices in the same promise. The new galaxy oath became more than words. It became the foundation of a new way of life. But the galaxy still had questions. What would happen when the next conflict came? What would they do when enemies rose again? Would this oath hold, or would it crumble under the weight of future threats? Commander Solace addressed these fears directly. She didn't promise that war would disappear. She didn't pretend that violence would never return. She was honest in a way that only survivors can be. "We are not promising the end of danger," she said, her voice steady. "We are promising the end of abandonment, the end of betrayal, the end of leaving the weak behind for the strong to survive alone. We will still face battles, but now we face them together." Her words carried the weight of everything the galaxy had witnessed humanity's first war. The sleepless nights of the echo effect, the changes in biology, culture, and behavior that no species could reverse. The oath wasn't a cure for conflict. It was an agreement about how to endure it without losing each other. In the days that followed, the oath was carved into monuments, not of stone or metal, but of shared action. The species of the galaxy began new programs focused on collective survival. Rescue fleets became more important than military ones. Training centers focused on mutual protection rather than individual conquest. Defense systems were redesigned not to destroy attackers, but to shield the vulnerable. Even trade networks changed, with stronger worlds supporting weaker ones in ways they had never considered before. The new galaxy oath wasn't just spoken, it was lived. Sivrok, the Elith historian, recorded the final chapters of this story. In his private logs, he remembered the night when the forbidden recordings of humanity's first war had first leaked into the galaxy. "I thought of how terrified they all were, watching humans refuse to break under impossible pressure. Back then, the galaxy thought they had witnessed a monster. Now he knew the truth. They had witnessed the blueprint for survival through unity. His final entry read, "We thought humanity's war would break us. No. Instead, it taught us how to stand. Today we are not just survivors. We are guardians of each other's existence." That is the real victory. Somewhere beyond the known stars, the echoes of that first human war still whispered through the cosmos. But now those echoes no longer brought nightmares. They brought purpose. They reminded every sentient being that no life was too small to protect. No sacrifice too great to share, and no future worth living unless it was a shared future. The new Galaxy Oath became the heartbeat of this new civilization, a promise that, no matter what came next, no one would ever stand alone again.